I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1782 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there. As told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about a new book that I have just added to the recommended reading list of this podcast. The name of it is A Quiet Cadence, written by Mark Treanor, a U.S. Marine who served in Vietnam. Before I do that, I want to ask everyone out there listening, if you are a Vietnam veteran, please put your name in the hat to receive a free legacy staff from the good people out at Brazos Walking Sticks in Waco, Texas. These legacy staffs are something else. If you're familiar with Psalm 23:4, it says in there, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." I myself have a legacy staff from the Brazos Walking Stick Company in Waco, Texas. It is an amazing thing. Thank the good Lord above, I don't need a walking stick, but this legacy staff, which is made just for me, has my name stamped on it, has a nice emblem of the flag on it. It just makes you feel good to walk with it, even though I don't need it. Walking around with it just makes you feel better, makes you feel protected, just like that Bible verse says. And it's true. This stick is strong enough to stand firm when you're standing up. You can also lean on it when you're taking a break. You can also use it to ward off pesky animals, both the four-legged kind and the two-legged variety. The good news is this. The guys out at the Brazos Walking Sticks Company has authorized me to give away 4 of these incredible, fantastic legacy staffs. They're going to give away 1 legacy staff to 1 selected member of the 4 main branches that served in Vietnam. The Coast Guard was in Vietnam. We'll take care of them later. This time we're giving away 1 legacy staff to 1 veteran of the 4 branches of service that was in Vietnam: Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marines. All you have to do is give me your name, your rank, your branch of service, and the time you were in Vietnam. That's it. You don't have to fill out any long forms. It doesn't cost you any money. There's no obligation. All you've got to do is send it to me at my email address, MacPayne, MacPayne, @gmail.com. Get it to me before the 4th because I have 2 beautiful young ladies who are going to conduct the ceremony of picking the names from the hat. There will be 1 from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. If your name is selected, you will receive one of these legacy staffs. You can have your name on it, your unit on it, or whatever. You can also pick out the medallion you want on it. You might want a medallion from your service, like a Marine or the Air Force or whatever. It's up to you. I guarantee you, once you get this stick, you will treasure it forever because it is wonderful. Again, all you have to do is send me an email to macpayne@gmail.com. The spelling of that is MacPayne. Just tell me your name so I can get in touch with you if you win, of course. Let me know what your rank was. Tell me your branch so we can put your name in the right stack. Also, let me know when you were over there in Vietnam. That's all there is to it. I also guarantee you, after you send me your name and email address so I can notify the winners, you will not receive a set of encyclopedias 2 weeks later. That's not going to happen here. So don't delay. I would like as many people as possible to participate in this legacy staff giveaway. just to show we have pride in our service. Now let's get on to this book I'm going to tell you about. This book is fiction, but it was written by a Marine lieutenant in the infantry over there in Vietnam. He did a great job on it. I'm going to tell you about it. His name is Mark Treanor. There's a story about this book that appeared in the Rutland Herald newspaper up there in Rutland, Vermont. Beautiful country up there. Title of the story is MSJ Grad Writes Vietnam War Book. It was provided by Patrick Mcardle, a staff writer for the Rutland Herald. Mark Treanor has a very impressive resume. He went to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, volunteered for the Marines, went over to Vietnam, served as a Marine infantry lieutenant, came home, went to law school, and had a very successful career as an attorney. A few years ago, when he slowed up his legal career, he decided to start writing. He just published this book. He's very proud of this book, which he should be. It's a good one. I recommend everybody get a copy of it and read it. Go over to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Check out episode 1782. There you will see a picture of Mike. Of course, he's got his face mask on, sitting with some friends at a book signing ceremony, holding his book. There will also be a link in that episode where you can click on it and be reading his book in no time. There will also be a picture in the show notes for this podcast episode of Mark without his face covering. I just want you to see the person who wrote this book. Mark Treanor is another one of those tremendous representatives of the Vietnam veteran generation, one as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from its country. Mark Treanor verifies that statement, and I'm so happy for him and his book. Right now, let's take a look at this story about Mark and his book. After you hear this story, you'll agree with me. He is a tremendous representative of the Vietnam veteran generation. Let's take a look at this story by Patrick Mcardle. Dateline, Rutland, Vermont. A semi-retired attorney who served during the Vietnam War as a young man after graduating from Mount St. Joseph Academy as a member of the class of 1964 was in Main Street Park on Tuesday talking about his first novel, which is about a young man who served in the Vietnam War. Mark Treanor said his novel, A Quiet Cadence, has only been in print for a few weeks. Treanor said this about his book. It follows a 19-year-old Marine throughout his time in Vietnam and then for several years after that, but it was told by him when he was 65 years old, so he's got the perspective of looking back and trying to, for the first time, talk about his experience and tell people that he cares about it. The book is fiction, but based on facts. Treanor was a Marine rifle platoon leader during the war. Some prominent readers have supported the book, including former Secretary of Defense and retired U.S. Marine Corps General James Mattis. A must-read for any American who wants to understand war and its impact on those we send into close combat. Mark Treanor sets the standard for an authentic description of combat and what our infantry veterans carry with them when they return home. The general wrote, "The novel is informed by personal experience." Treanor said after he graduated from MSJ, he went to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. At the time, about 10% of each class was allowed to volunteer for the Marine Corps. He entered the war, where he served for a year as a 22-year-old second lieutenant. And he survived. That's pretty good, considering he was a platoon commander in the U.S. Marines on the front lines up near the DMZ. That was some bad country up there. Continuing. After growing up in Rutland County, including going to Christ the King School for 8th grade, Vietnam was a different world. It was really, really different, as you can imagine, to go from a place like this. Treanor said at the peaceful Rutland Park and civilization to being over there, where basically as an infantryman, you live in the dirt and you eat cold food out of little green cans. Ah, yes, I remember those delightful meals out of those sea ration cans, especially when you heated them up with a little C4. Continuing. In some respects, it was like walking into the pages of a National Geographic, because there was nothing in the area I worked in but rice paddies and bamboo huts, or, as we call them, hooches that the Vietnamese people lived in, he said. During his time in Vietnam, Treanor saw worse. That was a country that was unlike Vermont. Literally every day when we were out in the bush, it was a question of, is somebody going to hit a booby trap? The area we worked in was heavily booby-trapped. Or were we going to be in a firefight? It's really interesting to look back on it and realize how resilient and courageous and dedicated what were mostly 18 and 19-year-old kids. He said. Treanor said he has been interested in writing for about 30 years. After he retired from most of his legal work, inspiration struck. I decided that I was not aware of any novel that combined these perspectives. The first half of it being a very authentic depiction of infantry combat on the ground with what it's like to deal with the memories and nightmares in the years afterwards, he said. With the book finished, Treanor said he took pride that it earned endorsements like the ones from Mattis, retired General David Petraeus, who was the commander of the multinational force in Iraq, and retired Admiral James Stratavus, former NATO Supreme Commander. Wow, that's an impressive list of endorsements. Continuing. On Tuesday, Treanor said he was at the park with about half a dozen people who were MSJ classmates who wanted him to sign the book. All of the visitors were wearing masks and practicing social distancing. All right. Very commendable. Continuing. Tom Ano, another member of the class of 1964, said he knew Treanor while they were both in school, but not well. He said he is already reading A Quiet Cadence now. I'm enjoying it. He tells me it's a novel, but it seems like real life to me. It's scary. I mean, it's a well-written book, he said. Ano said his class was close, and he believed MSJ's class of 1964 was the largest ever at the school with more than 200 members. He said he believed other classmates wanted to be there on Tuesday but had concerns about COVID-19 '84. A remote event is being planned for more alumni to reconnect with Treanor and talk about the book. Treanor said the book took about 3 years to write and needed 8 or 9 drafts to be ready for publication. He is now working on 3 more books. After the war, Treanor spent another 3.5 years in the Marines before entering law school. Working in private practice or for corporations, Treanor was active in the law for almost 40 years and now spends time consulting or serving on corporate boards when he's not writing. He said he spent about 5 years, starting in 1993, living in Stratford as part of his legal career, although his work was primarily not based in Vermont courts, but around the United States. That means he accumulated lots of coupons from the airlines because he probably flew all over the place. Continuing. Treanor said his book, published by Naval Institute Press, is available through general bookstores or online at sites such as Amazon. That's the link that I put in the show notes, so you can purchase his book from Amazon. In my estimation, that is the best place ever to buy a book. They're efficient, it's fast, and it's easy. You now have your marching orders. Go to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Go to episode 1782. Scroll down to the bottom, and there you will see recommended reading and a picture of his book, A Quiet Cadence. Click on the button right next to it, and before you know it, you will be reading it. You might even want to go up to Vermont and get him to sign it for you. I'm sure he would be glad to do it. I hereby congratulate Mark Treanor on the publication of his first book. We wish you the best, and I hope you make the New York Times bestseller list. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1782 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News. I have to close this podcast now because the grass cutters have just arrived. Again, thank you for listening.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?